Welcome! My name is Guy Gaylor, and I will be presenting this tutorial. It is aimed for users with a basic understanding of 3ds Max and particle flow. In it, we will be blowing out the side of a skyscraper. During this tutorial, I will go over how to create an object to be the source of the particles, a simple driver to trigger the exploding glass, and using shape instances to create the glass shards. I will then conclude with a basic overview of the compositing for the final shot. So I've loaded up the starter scene, which I will include with the tutorial, and this is in Max 2008. And basically what I have here is a very simple skyscraper that's just made out of the standard primitive box, and I created some dividers in here to make it look like it has windows. I also added in just a very simple camera movement that's going to track as the building's exploding out. And I have a plane in the background that is the 3ds Studio map of Hong Kong. And then I also created a duplicate of that I stuck in front of it so that it will reflect off of the skyscraper, just all for the purpose of this tutorial. The skyscraper has already been texturized. I'm using Mental Ray, and this is just the basic chrome inside of the architecture design. And then the dividers here are just a simple matte. So the first thing that we want to create to do this is the actual area of this skyscraper that is going to have the glass blowing out. And we're going to do that by just creating a very simple piece of geometry that's going to act as the emitter for that. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the top front window, and I'm just going to create a very simple jaggy pattern here that is going to be the emitter, but I'm also going to use it as my mask to show where there's now a hole in the building after this explosion rips through it. And you know, this is very simple and nobody is really going to see it exactly. So I want to position it so it's just sitting right on the front, and I'm going to go ahead and rename it now so that it has a name that I'll be able to find later. And I'm going to call it Particle Position Object. I don't need to keep it as a spline. I'm going to go ahead and convert it into a poly. And as you see now, it's a solid piece of geometry that will be able to be used for our particles. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to use particle flow to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring particle flow up. I'm going to create it here. And we'll go ahead and open up the window. Now I have a dual monitor system, so sometimes these things pop up in the other window, and sometimes I'll just drag them off the screen, which is quicker than closing and opening these. So right now it's all the default settings, and it's hooked to actually emit particles from this position icon. What we wanted to do instead, though, is we wanted to actually emit particles from this new piece of geometry we created. And that's very simple to do. We just need to replace this position icon with the position object instead. So I'm just going to go ahead and just drag that up and over the top of it. And then I'll click on it, and then I can say add from a list. And there's the particle position object that we just created. And I'm going to go ahead and change the birth. Right now it's going from emitting from 0 to 30, and I actually just want everything to emit from frame 0 to 0. And as you can see here, we have the particles are stuck onto this object. And if we scroll the slider forward, you see the particles are already starting to fall, which is not actually what we wanted to do at this point. And that's happening because we have the default speed is on, and we actually don't need the speed at all. So we'll just go ahead and delete that. We also don't need the rotation, and we don't need a shape. So now if we scroll through, we see that the particle actually does nothing, which is exactly what we wanted to do at this point, because we are actually going to be using these particle points as our collision objects. And at this point, this is really just a triggering mechanism. So we don't want these particles to move. We don't want them to do anything. We just want them to sit on this object and wait for some object to collide with them. And then we'll generate our next particles, which will be the glass shards exploding out of the building. What we want to do is we actually need to create the collision object that's going to hit these particles and trigger the glass shard shooting out into the open space. So to do that, we're going to create a really simple object, which is just another primitive box. And I'm going to just draw it in here and get it positioned. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the auto key on. So we want it to actually hit these particles and start its emitting or triggering right here at frame 10. And then we want it to get to all the way to the end of the building by frame 60. So there we have it. Now, in order for us to actually use this as a collision object, we need to go ahead and add a deflector. So I'm going to go over, and there's many deflectors to choose from, but I'm going to go ahead and just use the U deflector. And it allows me to pick a geometry to act as the collision object. So now I have that set, so I can go back into our particle view. And add in a collision. So basically this is just an event. I drag it up into my event 1, and I have the list of deflectors it can choose from, and I pick my U deflector. And now if we scrub through, we should actually see this working. So as you see, it's pushing the particles off. And we got a couple particles that are stuck in there that are not moving, and that's because this box at frame 10 maybe needs to be over just a slight bit more. So we'll just correct that right now. We'll move this just a little bit this way. And now if we scrub through, we see everything is moving.